this is Lirio from the core team. In this session, I'm going to present the update and the future of the Pi app platform. In the second quarter of 2020, we introduced Pi app platform prototype with its first third-party app, FeverIQ. We had multiple iterations of the prototype to fix bugs, improve scalability and user experience, and finally, we announced the developer SDK and the testing sandbox at the end of May. The Pi SDK allows developers to develop their application in whichever programming language they prefer in their backend and integrate with the Pi platform interface with JavaScript in the frontend. For developers to integrate with Pi, we adopted industry standard technologies such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript so that they can focus more on building applications rather than getting complex technologies to work. Pi third-party apps will initially be hitting Pi's backend so that they can iterate on their app design and establish their use cases and audiences. Once they are ready and the blockchain becomes live, the backend will be able to adapt to hit the Pi testnet or mainnet directly, eventually achieving decentralization. This makes sure that the development of utility and decentralization are in parallel rather than in sequence. In Q3, we hope that developers would be able to play with the release SDK and sandbox and explore what could be built on Pi. We will see a few examples later in the developers' demos after the core team talk. The next step for Pi platform is to increase its functionalities for third-party developers to develop fully functional apps with ability to provide better user experience while improving scalability and the security of the overall Pi system in relation to the Pi platform and the protection of user privacy. First, we would like to provide SDK endpoint for developers to take advantage of the scalable database backend of pinetwork. We will build the user state object in our SDK for third-party apps to provide continued user experience. For instance, the ability for a user to continue what they left off from previous visit. This is indeed important for almost all apps. Providing this endpoint means that developers will be able to store data for each of their users directly onto the Pi backend without needing to set up their own server or store the data in the frontend. While more complex apps will still require their own backend, this SDK functionality will enable a plethora of simple apps to work without worrying about the servers. Second, the platform will be able to allow authentication into using third-party apps without sharing the Pi username. In the current version of the platform, the access and use of third-party apps rely on the user's willingness to share their Pi username. Even though the choice to share or not is completely in the hand of the user, not sharing the Pi username would mean inability to use the specific third-party app. The next version of the platform would like to make the authentication to use third-party apps more flexible to provide better control and protection of user privacy while maintaining their ability to use the third-party apps. Eventually, the platform will enable third-party apps to request specific information about the user and allow the user to accept or refuse each of them. The platform wants to provide more functionalities and accessibility for third-party apps to tap into the infrastructure of the Pi system and Pi community. For example, the ability for third-party apps to create their own Pi chat room through the SDK to interact with their users. We will allow developers to generate custom links that would take the user directly into the developer's intended place inside of the third-party apps, a process called deep linking. This way, they will be able to invite new users to the app directly without having to go through the general workflow of the Pi app first. It will also enable experiences where one user can interact with another one seamlessly. For instance, in a round-based game, a user gets a link that navigates them directly into the interface of the game where they need to make a move. Or a marketplace, a user can go directly check one specific item. Finally, the platform will also gradually release more functionalities to the developers to integrate with the Pi currency. In the current version, developers can request payment from Pioneer. Later version will provide the ability for the developers to pay the Pioneer. completing the loop of bidirectional payment between app developers and pioneers. As we discussed in the Pi Phase 2 strategy announcement in March 2020, we will first focus on enabling third-party apps inside of the Pi app itself, before enabling a Pi payment for completely external apps. Technically, this means that the availability of specific API endpoint will tailor to the need of in-app third-party apps based on reasons such as efficiency and security, rather than enabling external applications to be able to run Pi payment, which will come further down the line though. Thus, the API endpoint that we will make available next will be able to validate payment to the app developer and to provide privacy control between a pioneer and an app. Thanks for watching.